So Brian Sagas. Who is Brian, you may ask? He's this dude, Briar Giant, and the deck's based around him. So at first glance, you're like, 7 mana for a 5/6 seems pretty shitty. And I was looking at this card and I was like, maybe he's kind of like Gurmag Angler for enchantments. And turns out he's not. He's terrible. Originally in the deck list that I did build, I had 4 Brians. I mean, his name is in it, but he ended up getting cut just because he didn't make it. But we got one in the sideboard just for sauce. Anyways, let's get to the deck. So, obviously with Brian Sagas, you have a lot of enchantments, and all your creatures are going to gain value based off every enchantment entering the battlefield. So let's start at the 1-drop. So we have 23 enchantments, 11 creatures, and 6 non-creatures, and 22 lands. Cat's going ham. So let's start at our 1-drop slot. We have Young Boy of the Bounty. So 1 mana for a 1/1 with lifelink, and then you can pay 1 to give target creature or enchantment pro color of your choice. So we're only rolling 2 at the slot, and he is the only 1-drop in the deck. But really cool thing about him is he is an enchantment, so he does trigger some of your other creatures' abilities later on. And sometimes you do get into you gum up the board really easy with this deck, and you get nothing's really happening. So late game, giving one of your creatures pro, whatever color the opponent's against, and he can just swing in with a big boy. Sometimes it does end the game. So, yeah. So that's all we got for 1-drops. Let's head on to 2-drops. Sticking with the enchantments, we are going to start with Seal Away. So white usually doesn't have the best removal. Seal Away is probably the best you can get at that. It does have flash. Anything that's tapped, you basically send it to the laboratory. But the key thing is it is an enchantment. So at instant speed, you can trigger some of the abilities, the ETB triggers of some of the guys you have. And you can kill the biggest thing on the board. But in the format, there are things like Ulamog or Rabblemaster, things that when they do attack, triggers do happen. So that's why Seal Away it isn't the best removal, but it does give you a little bit of survivability just to get you to the late game, so you can just start grinding value on your opponents. All right, next up. So we have Omen of the Sea. So I'm running 3 of these, and this card's pretty interesting. 1 of the blue has flash, and then when it enters the battlefield, you scry 2, then draw a card. And you can pay 3, sack it, and you can scry 2 as well. So cool thing about it, obviously, it's an enchantment. Wow. In my previous build, I was running the new Saga, Medomize. Medomize
Prophecy.
In the previous build, I was running Medomize Prophecy. I can't say it. I can't say the card name. Just can't do it. Anyways, it got fucking cut. It was done. It got snipped. For 2 mana to scry 2 and potentially draw 2 is very powerful, but I just felt because it takes 3 turns for that to happen. A lot of the times, you're not going to be casting the card that you say, or you don't draw into it, and you get no value. So I think overall, for card draw, Omen of the Sea is better in the slot, and yeah. Next up on the 2-drop, we're going to have 4 of the Birth of Meletes. I don't know if you guys have been playing Arena lately, but this card's everywhere. It's nuts. 2 mana. You get to search for a plains. Next turn, you make a wall, 0/4 wall, and then you gain 2 life. Just for 2 mana, it gives you so much value. And considering that this deck has problems against early game aggro, it's a really good way to fix your mana, make some blockers, gain some life, just get you to the late game. Now we get into the beefy boys. Yes. So we are going to run a playset of the first of the Roman games. This card's actually pretty cool. So you make a 1/1, and then next turn you give something +3 counter 1/1 counters, and then next turn if you have a creature with power 4 or greater, you draw 2 cards. And then the last one, you make a gold token, which is basically a treasure. You can just sack it for mana. That one's not really as important, but this card's really cool because there are ways in the deck. You're making a lot of creatures on the battlefield, so you usually always have a target to hit with the second lore counter. Also, too, there's a lot of different ways in the deck that we can flicker this. So I had times where, your board was cleared, and it came to your turn, and then the second lore counter was resolving, and you had no targets, but you can flicker it on the stack, create your 1/1, and then give the counters on top. So this is just like the start of the engine. We're just going to grind our opponents out turn after turn. So yeah, pretty cool card. And then next up at the 3-drop slot, we have the History of Benalia. For those of you that play Standard, you probably remember this card was around $25 when Dominaria was in Standard, and it was a powerhouse. And it is. You're making a 2/2 Knight with Vigilance every single turn for 2 turns, and then, it pumps your team after that. This thing is awesome. When you play this, you're just building up your board state, getting all those more creatures, so like their own games can hit with like putting counters on, things like that. And having Vigilance is really nice. This is probably the one card that pulls the whole entire deck together. And then and then last for the enchantments, we have 2 of Enigmatic Incarnation. Incarnation. No. Words. Words. Next up at the 4-drop slot, we have 2 of fuck!
Just have to have someone voice over. Enigmatic.
Enigmatic Incarnation. I can say it. Words.
You got it.
So this card is very interesting. 2 green and a blue. At the beginning of your end step, you may sack another enchantment. If you do, search your library for a creature card with converted mana cost +1 of the CMC of the enchantment you sacked and put it on the battlefield. Since we only have 11 creatures in our deck, sometimes you'll get in board states where you're not getting payoffs. You're playing your histories, you're playing your first round games, but your big meaty boys, they're not on the battlefield. So this is a good way to search for those creatures. And as you'll see, because of the CMC of all the sagas, we're trying to hit 2 creatures specifically, and the CMC line up perfectly for them. So yeah, this is a really cool card. And then so for creatures, obviously at the 1-drop, we had Bounty Boy. We don't have any 2-drops for creatures, but we go right into 3-drops, and we have Citizen Champion. And those of you that watched our previous video, Mark told the story of Citizen Champion so perfectly. If you haven't seen that, go check it out. Yeah, so this guy is nuts. This is, bringing the whole entire deck together. He is a payoff. So anytime you play an enchantment, he gets a +1/+1 counter, and you get to draw a card. So this guy gets fucking huge. When he comes out, if your opponent does not have a response for him immediately, you get so much value. playing even like Omen to Sea, Seal Away. You can do sweet combat tricks, cast enchantments at instant speed, give them a pump, draw a card, find something else you're looking for. This guy is the bee's knees. Alright, at our 4 drop slots for creatures, we have Archon of the Sun's Grace. Pegasus boy in the house. Yeah, this card's real. Flying, lifelink. Whenever you play enchantment, make a 2/2 Pegasus, and then when Archon's on the field, has lifelink. Nuts. This thing is nuts. A lot of times, like, you're gonna gum up the board in a lot of games. This is a way to get over and just start ending the game. Also, too, if you're playing against like aggro and you make it to turn 4 or turn 5 and you can play an enchantment afterwards, like, I don't see how you lose at all. You're just gaining so much life and you're making so many tokens. And like I said, you know, you have your incarnation, you know, to get this guy in easier. On the last trigger, you can sack First of Rowing Games, bring him in. Their turn, you can flash in like an Omen or a Seal Away, make a Pegasus, do crazy combat tricks. Like, this is the card that ties the whole entire deck together, and it's fucking nuts. And last for our creature slot, we have a one of Cavalier of Dawn. I was looking at a bunch of different creatures to put in this slot. I settled with Cavalier Dawn because I know triple white is kind of scary, but we are grabbing a lot of planes. We do have a lot of white resources on the battlefield, especially those gold tokens. Those might help, actually, for this. But I wanted a 5-drop, only because at any time, if you had, say, 2 incarnations out and you wanted to get rid of one, and you don't have Cavalier Dawn yet, and they have a threat on the board, like a Nissa or, you know, a Teferi or a Planeswalker you can't deal with, you can just end step, bring in Cav, snipe whatever they have, and then you got this big boy on the field. And he synergizes really nice with the deck too, because if he does leave the battlefield, you get to go grab an enchantment, maybe like a History Benalia or something like that, and bring it back. So just a one of, and it's really nice when you hit Cavalier of Dawn. All right, for our non-creature spells, non-land spells, what the fuck are these called? For our instants and sorcery, we have a playset of Flicker of Fate. This is nuts! I'm so happy they printed one of these. It works so nice with the deck. So, like I was saying earlier, a lot of times you can abuse the triggers on your sagas. You know, History of Benalia at like instant speed, you can make another knight, and then, you know, in response to that, it's entering the battlefield, so then it triggers your other boys, and you can make a Pegasus, draw a card. You can do a whole bunch of wacky shit with this. Last but not least, the cream of the crop, we have 2 Dance Dance Revolutions. I can't dance. Yeah, obviously, you know, this deck is made, or this card is made for this deck. You're going to be casting this like mid-late game. And if you have like any of your payoffs on the board, casting this for like even 3 or 4 or even 2 sometimes, you just take the game away. You get so much value. Casting like 2 History Benalias back or Roman Games back, it's just nuts. If you have like Assassin out or anything like that, you just get so much value that is very hard for your opponents to keep up. And you just temple them out of the game. And I think 2 is the right number. I don't want to run any more because you don't want to, you know, waste card slots in your deck. So for land, so we have 22 lands. So pretty simple. We're just trying to hit all of our colors. We are playing 3 colors, and you need to have double white or green, which can be hard sometimes. But because of that, and because of Birth of Miladies, you are searching for planes. So we're running 6 planes. We're going to run 1 island, 1 forest, and that's because we are running 2 Fabled Passage. So if you're in the pinch and you need to grab that extra color, they are available. We're also going to run 4 Hallowed Fountain. Obviously, the color fixing is nice. 2 Botanical Sanctums. You do want some of those fast lands, like I said, with the green sources. We're going to run 3 Temple Gardens and 2 Breeding Pools. And I tried to minimize, because I know breeding pools are pretty expensive right now, so I tried to minimize the amount of breeding pools in this deck. But from what I've played so far, this mana base seems to work very well. Into the sideboard. So the thing that I've been noticing is you're kind of a mid-rangey tempo deck. You're gonna have problems with aggro. You have problems with combo. So our sideboard, we tried to lean in super heavy on those 2 different play styles. Control is... it's hard because the Sagas, you do usually out-tempo control. Just because you have triggers going off every single turn. It's a very close game. But aggro and combo we are going to lose to. So that's why I chose for the sideboard that we have to lean heavier in on that. So we have 3 Damp Spheres. Obviously Damp Sphere is great. A lot of the decks I've seen in the format so far that are running combo, like Jeskai Ascendancy or even Underworld Breach, if you go the Damp Sphere out early, like they need to get rid of it or they can't do their shit. And the game just keeps going on and on and on. And then you're just gonna out-tempo them out and give them the beatdown. We do have 1 Destiny Spinner in just for against control. Giving your creatures the ability to not be countered and your enchantments as well is nice. And also too, she does have a cool mana sink that in the pinch or late game could probably end the game pretty quick. We also have 1 Detention Spear. This is obviously great. It hits basically anything. If you have a problem, like a Ulamog or like a Teferi or something that you can't deal with right away, bring in your D-Sphere and then you can exile that bad boy out. 3 Authority of the Councils. This card's nuts for aggro. Makes some creatures enter tapped. You gain a life every time a creature enters the battlefield. And it's an enchantment too. This is what you're looking for in the aggro matchups. Also, 2 Omen of the Sun. This thing's surprisingly good. As Flash, you gain 2 life and you make 2 blockers. Obviously, if you have a board state, you get to trigger your boys when you cast it. So this is a really good card for aggro as well. And then, obviously, against graveyard decks, we're going to run a Grafdigger's Cage, Rest in Peace, and Ashes of the Abhorrent. I'm good at words. All these pieces obviously are really good for Graveyard Hate. It does like that Grafdigger's Cage is an artifact, so you're not getting the enchantment triggers. And if you end up running these 2, you'll probably have to take out Dance Revolution. But in a lot of scenarios, shut down like Underworld Breach, combo decks, things like that, you will need to sideboard these in. We also have 1 Astra, Spidey Boy. She is so good against like Spell Slinger or like control matchups. They have to kill her. If not, if you play against like Phoenix or something like that, or Jeskai Ascendancy, they won't be able to get through with all their creatures because you're making so many blockers. And last but not least, we have the man himself, Brian. See, you could substitute him for like a Teferi or anything else that's good. But that's not about the memes. We're about the memes. But yeah, guys, that's the deck tech today. Thank you for tuning in to Chromatic Banter. I am Drama.
I'm Pete.
And yeah, if you guys like the deck, if you have any comments about, things that would work differently in it, please go in the comments below, tell us what you think, and tune in next time.